For the second straight day, we are going to be talking about a team that was at some point in the franchise's history referred to as the Hornets and has terrible, terrible injury luck. Obviously, we talked about the actual Hornets yesterday, but the New Orleans Pelicans, formerly the New Orleans Hornets, also just had terrible, terrible injury luck this season. And that's kind of been the case the last few years. I don't know if few is even a large enough number to put that on them just because it feels like it's been a very, very long time since they've had everyone healthy. So that's just kind of the way things have been in New Orleans. Shout out to Dyson Daniels, who gave us a phenomenal meme quote graphic where it just says that organization is cursed. Yeah, I mean, things turned out well for him as soon as he left. The Pelicans have a lot of questions that they need to answer this summer. They have and have had for the last few seasons just so many pieces that they can, if put together properly, like they can be a really good team. They just haven't had everyone healthy at the same time, and when they've been healthy, it's been okay. It hasn't been as good as you necessarily expect it to be. This year should have been a really good season if everyone was healthy, but yeah, it went south pretty quickly for the Pelicans. Before we get into the specifics there, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Of course, they have pretty much every sport, but this is an NBA podcast and it's the NBA freaking playoffs. So let's talk about some of their odds that they have for tonight's games, which will be game threes for the Knicks and Pistons, the Thunder and Grizzlies, and the Nuggets and Clippers. As I said earlier this week, the Thunder and Grizzlies, there's not too much to discuss there. The Thunder are favored by 8.5 in Memphis. They're up 2-0. It would, as of right now, it seems like that's pretty much a lock to be a sweep for a series. I would love to see, just for the sake of having exciting playoff basketball, Memphis put something together over the next couple games. And I don't know, maybe my expectations aren't even that they tie the series or avoid getting swept. I just want to see closer games. I think Memphis is not as bad as they've looked, obviously, but I think it's just running into the Thunder in round one that it's not easy. The Knicks and Pistons, excited to see playoff basketball back in Detroit after getting their first playoff win since 2008, which is wild to think about. Just think about what the NBA looked like back in 2008, and that was the last time the Pistons won an NBA game. Think about what the world looked like. Think about what everything looked like back in 2008. It's the last time. So I think the fans there are going to be very rowdy, very excited. Yeah, the Knicks are favored by 1 currently in that game. It's pretty interesting to see that they're favored in Detroit. Just 1 game. They did lose the last one, so they could expect them to hopefully respond well. We'll see. I mean, it's basically a toss-up. A 1-point favorite. That's basically a toss-up. And the other game, Clippers are favored by 5 currently. Every game of that series is probably going to be close. I'm hoping for 7 close games. I don't even care who wins, because to be honest, after 7 close games like that, they're probably either team is going to be exhausted and running into a very fresh Thunder team that will have potentially had a week off. So we just need to enjoy this while it lasts. It's been a lot of fun so far, so I'm excited for some more close games. And then in between all these fun games, you can head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas style games. They have poker, they have a live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. It's time to talk about the Pelicans. It was a rough season for them. They could get rewarded with they have the 4th best odds, the number 1 overall pick. So assuming they don't slide down the lottery, which will be in a few weeks, they should be able to add a really talented player. What position do they even need? Not really sure exactly, but you're probably not drafting necessarily for need at this point. I think that they do have to make quite a few decisions, and that'll be on Joe Dumars, and I believe they also just hired Troy Weaver. So they have a a dynamic duo making some selections there. We'll see what they can do with their first pick with this team. It has kind of leading this organization. And maybe this is a mini rant, but been kind of having this like line of thought the last few days about just like resumes in NBA. As soon as someone's hired, everybody's like, oh, they did this in their last stop. For example, with Scott Perry getting hired by the Kings, and um, everybody immediately brought up every decision he's made when he was the GM of the Knicks, or like his previous comments about Zach LaVine. And I think we're just comparing, getting a job in an NBA management situation to just getting an average like business job, or like if you're submitting your resume trying to get a job somewhere, and like everybody or your potential employer just judges based off of your piece of paper. Like nobody wants that. And you bring someone in for an interview, and maybe if they're able to say like, hey, like I know what I did wrong, I did this wrong, this is how I plan to be better in the future, it's like I'm all for second chances. Now, does that mean that I'm a believer that Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver are going to be the ones to turn around New Orleans? Probably not in that camp, but I'm not gonna say it's over before it even really gets started. So let's see what kind of decisions they make this summer, because this could be a big summer for New Orleans. I think last few years they've had plenty of potential to make moves over the offseason and haven't made too many big ones. I mean, they tried making the swing last summer, bringing in DeJounte Murray, trading out Tyson Danielson 2 firsts. Yikes. Which I think that trade probably wouldn't have looked as bad if DeJounte didn't get hurt early on. But we'll actually start talking about DeJounte. Wasn't sure exactly who we were going to start with, but I think that's a pretty good segue to talking about DeJounte Murray, who averaged 17.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 7.4 assists. Obviously didn't play a ton, only played 31 games, also averaged 2 steals, 1.7 threes, shot 39.3% from the floor. Pretty early on, the storyline was just how bad he was shooting. I'm going to pull up his games because it was a while before he had a singular game where he made more than 30% of it. Yeah, it was December, the first time he played a game for the Pelicans and shot better, or even reached 40% shooting at I guess this is a 7 for 12 game win over the Suns. That was win number 5 for the Pelicans. And obviously he missed a ton of time after fracturing his hand that first game. And he almost had a triple double that first game. Like things are still like went pretty well for him aside from the shooting, which he was never a great shooter, and then kind of saw his 3-point volume increase with the Hawks. I think wanting to play that style of basketball that Quinn Snyder likes. It was kind of like, hey, DeJounte, like shoot threes just like everyone else. And I think it benefited him. So I'm expecting him, because then he also had, the torn Achilles in, I guess that was last day of January. Not sure the exact timeline for return for him, if he'll be ready to go to start next season or not. He might miss some time early on, or just might start slow again. I mean, after having to recover from an Achilles tear all off season, you probably aren't going to just get right back into the swing of things. It's probably going to take him some time. So don't be surprised if there's another slow start next season from DeJounte, but I expect him to eventually get things going. It might just take him a little while, which kind of stinks, because obviously he's an incredible fantasy player when he is healthy and on the floor, and the lead point guard. The last season with the Spurs, 21.1 points, 8.3 rebounds, 9.2 assists, 2 steals. The assists went down, the rebounds went down with the Hawks while having to share the ball, share the floor with Trae Young, but he was still really, really good for fantasy. And then obviously a disaster season as both a shooter and health-wise, kind of deteriorated DeJounte this past season. But we still know what type of player he can be. He's 28 years old, so he'll be 29 by the time next season starts. So how much longer will he? I don't think it's hard to project how long these guys are going to continue to play at a high level, because some players, they get to be 30, 31, all of a sudden they just drop off their production pretty quickly. And then, but more recently, we've had a handful of guys play at an incredibly high level into their late 30s. And, obviously the anomalies are playing in their 40s, LeBron, Chris Paul, but even guys like Kevin Durant, James Harden, that are just, I mean, Steph, that are playing at an insanely high level at their age. So makes dynasty leagues interesting because it's, if you're in a dynasty fantasy football league and your running back turns 29, it's like, okay, there's only a handful that are going to keep playing. But with basketball, you have a 30-year-old, they could potentially play another 10 years at a high level. Potentially, probably not. Say the odds are against that happening, but it's not the same. Like the timelines make things interesting. Anyways, I'm expecting DeJounte to, I don't know, probably start off slow, but eventually get back to being what he was. But it just makes it hard to manage for the Pelicans because they will have decisions to make. Do they believe in this young core, young-ish core? I don't even, you can't really call it a super young core anymore because these guys are getting old, but like it's been a quote unquote young core for a little bit now. And DeJounte is on the older side of that. His game is too fantasy friendly to give up on him, I guess is kind of my bottom line. Now you could look at the start of next season as a good opportunity to buy low here. Just because of the Achilles tear. Maybe someone isn't as interested in like keeping him right now, in which case you can buy low. But if he's healthy to start next season or has to miss a week or two to start the season, I don't know exactly what the timeline is there. When he starts playing basketball next season, I would imagine he doesn't start off playing at a high level, which could make that a good opportunity to buy low. But yeah, very, very good player. Great for fantasy, and I think still valuable in dynasty, but maybe not quite as high as he was a few seasons ago. But there's a lot of guys on this team that are incredibly valuable, both redraft and dynasty formats. We'll talk about arguably the most valuable player right now, I would say. Maybe not even arguably. I would say definitively the most valuable. That's Trey Murphy, 24 years old, turned 25 this summer. Averaged 21.2 points, 5.1 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.1 steals, 3 threes. Started off the season not playing because he was injured. And then his season ended early due to another injury. He's kind of fallen victim to the New Orleans curse with the torn labrum, ended his season a bit early because he's dealt with some injuries, more so minor things. Just look so far this season, he played 62 games, or his career 62 games year one, small world, then played 79 games, and in the last 2 years 57 and 53. Not terrible, not ideal, just somewhere in the middle. But obviously an incredible player. So that's what, like, if you have a lineup out there of DeJounte, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, and I guess probably Yves Missy's the best center there right now. Like, how does that all fit together? I'm maybe not ideal. Actually, you could even say Herb Jones instead of CJ McCollum, and that's probably a better lineup. But goodness, the lack of spacing would be not ideal. Because I mean, Trey Murphy's an elite shooter, but obviously Zion and Yves Missy are non-shooters, and I don't know if DeJounte and Herb Jones are good enough as shooters to offset the lack of shooting from Zion and Yves Missy. But it would be ideal if they could get a stretch five in there instead of Yves Missy. But we'll get into that in a bit. But Trey Murphy, dynasty stud. If New Orleans, I guess, opts to prioritize him, I guess my fear with this is that some of his best games were without DeJounte, without Zion. What does it look like when everyone's healthy and he's not the number one or number two scoring option? Even if he should be, I don't think in a lineup with DeJounte, Zion, and Trey Murphy, that Trey Murphy ends up getting prioritized, if that makes sense. Because DeJounte's going to have the ball in his hands, and you make sure to get Zion the ball in his hands. Zion's probably the number one there, but then DeJounte's going to get his. So how does Trey Murphy's usage play out? Probably not as much as it should be. Probably wouldn't see the ball as much as we'd like him to see, and as much as he should for the benefit of the Pelicans as a team. Because he's the most valuable dynasty asset for sure. Because Zion, between the injury history and the limitations in his production, he can only be so valuable. He can be maximized in a certain team build, like one that punts, free throw percentage, and threes. Like, yeah, he can be incredibly valuable, but overall, Trey Murphy is the most valuable. So what does that look like? Hopefully, they continue to emphasize his value in the organization. I think if they could make moves this summer that kind of say, okay, like Trey Murphy, like this is where you stand. Like we value you as like the number 2 scoring option. I don't know exactly what type of moves those look like. Could Willie Green? Like, I don't know what Joe Dumars ends up wanting to do. I haven't seen anything either way. But I could have just missed a quote about him wanting to either retain Willie Green or figure out something else. So we'll see. Regardless, I think Trey Murphy's going to be very good. And as a player, he's very valuable. I am curious to see how this plays out if and when everyone on this team is healthy. But he's not the only, I guess, young guy that we won't even try and segue. We'll just go talk about Zion. We'll move on. We won't try and make this a flawless segue. All right, Zion, who is going to be turning 25 in July. Former number 1 overall pick, obviously. Averaged 24.6 points, 7.2 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.2 steals, 0.9 blocks. Field goal percentage still sky high, still doesn't hit free throws or threes. Zion looked really good when he was on the floor this year. I think he gets underrated with just how good and dominant he is because he's just consistently unavailable. Played 70 games last season. This past season only played 30. It makes it difficult because we just don't know. Hopefully Zion is healthy. He's way too good to give up on regardless of the health issues. If New Orleans wants to say, yeah, we can't have you be our franchise player because, availability has been an issue, somebody else will, because he's that good when he's on the floor. Like there are limitations and he does need to be built around a specific way. Give him shooters around him, but like he's just so good, and his improvements as a playmaker, I think, have kind of turned him in from this, okay, like he's this really good offensive option. Like obviously, you have to double team him because Zion's going to score. He's just way too strong. He's going to come dunk on you. Into like more of like this, okay, like we can run the offense through him, like quote unquote point Zion. Like it works out really, really well. The 5.3 assists was really encouraging. 28.6 minutes per game, by the way. So it was the lowest he's played in minutes per game since his rookie year. Averaged career highs in assists and steals. Tied his career high for rebounds. I'd love to see a healthy Zion for a full season. I know I'm not the only one. I think everyone probably in the state of Louisiana has been saying this for years. And I guess 70 games is healthy, which is what he did the year before. But I'd like to see him and the team fully healthy for a full season and just see what this team can do. Will we ever get that? That remains to be seen. But yeah, if New Orleans makes Zion available for a trade. Like somebody's gonna like trade plenty of assets, plenty of very legitimate assets to bring him in. Or maybe they try and say, "Oh, I don't know if I would like give up that much because of the injury history. I might have like a low ball offer," and New Orleans accepts it and moves on from Zion. I don't know. It's it's tough because you could say, yeah, but he hasn't been available, and you want a franchise player that is available, and you'd be right. Can't exactly see, like you're not wrong. I just think that Zion is too good to fully like give up unless you're getting just an incredible haul back because he's too talented. I think if we get Zion Williamson and Trey Murphy as a duo for a full season and into a postseason, that is a dangerous duo. Um, you don't want to have to try and slow down Zion for a 7-game series. Like you just don't. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, just randomly came to me. I don't think Zion has played in a playoff series. I'm gonna because I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but came to me because I think he's played in a play-in, but I don't think he's played in a postseason, or excuse me, a playoff. But I'm gonna double check that as I'm saying it. All right, so this year, obviously, no. Last season, they lost in the play-in to the Lakers. Oh, and Zion had 40, by the way, in that game. Okay. So then the year before, nope. Year before that, didn't play at all. So yeah, would like to see Zion in a 7-game series. I don't think anybody wants to like have to game plan for 7 games of Zion Williamson. Just don't think you want to have to deal with that. Yeah, now my wheels are turning trying to think about that. You can't this guy, I know he has been healthy for a playoff series since you drafted him in 2019. Now it's 2025. The next time he would be like potentially even able to play in a playoff series is 2026, and that's if New Orleans is healthy enough to make it. But I don't know, man. I think you don't give up on this until you see a full playoff series out of him and see how it goes. I wouldn't if I was imagine being the matchup that has to guard Zion Williamson for a 7-game series, like 2 weeks of having Zion go through your chest and dunk the ball. That doesn't sound like fun to me. I don't know. We'll see what New Orleans ends up doing. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of decisions that need to be made. They did trade Brandon Ingram, which was a domino I expected to fall earlier on. Was kind of expecting that last summer. So them doing it at the trade deadline isn't surprising, but finally happened. Got back Kelly Olynyk and Bruce Brown. I believe Bruce Brown's a free agent. I think he's probably going to go sign with a contender. They also have Herb Jones, one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA, who's also coming off an injury-riddled season that ended his season early. It's kind of the theme with the Pelicans. Everybody ended their season early. If you go on Basketball Monster, the top 5 players in per game value for them all have the little X that's grayed out saying out for season. And they also have another with Brandon Boston on there. We'll briefly talk about here in a bit. Herb Jones played first 4 games, missed about a month, played about a month, missed the rest of the season. Averaged a career high in steals and assists. Didn't shoot the ball that well. His field goal percentage dropped from 49.8 to 43.6. I think he's not like a high volume 3-point shooter, but he's good enough. Like a guy that you're fine as a 3-and-D floor spacer. Seeing him improve a little bit with the assists, just doing some more playmaking is encouraging, but obviously that's not his main goal, main role. But yeah, they have again, this is just the overarching theme. Like they have the pieces. They have so many players in this team that a contending team would just give up so many assets to bring into their organization because it would be enough for them to win a championship. I mean, if you need a maybe you don't need CJ McCollum as a starter, but if you need CJ McCollum as a veteran bench scorer, like a lot of contending teams could use that. Herb Jones as a point of attack defender, like a lot of teams can use that. Use that. Trey Murphy, just how talented he is, as both on both sides of the ball. Zion, obviously, like a lot of pieces on this team that a lot of teams could use. With new management, I could see them. I mean, you could make decisions and try and full on reset, rebuild, say, okay, we've got a lot of talented players that have come in here over the last few years, but we just keep getting injured. Like this is a new regime. Like let's hit the reset button. It's a great two classes in a row to do that. Because I mean, potentially you could hop up a little bit this year, or if not, just land somebody in the draft, and then kind of start building around them. Let me just see, because do they have their own? Yeah, they do have their own first round pick next year and a top four protected first from the Pacers. They have the right to swap their pick with the Bucks next year, but I don't envision them being worse than the Bucks, barring a massive, massive change for Milwaukee, like such as trading Giannis and Dame and hitting the reset button. But if they're not even going to have their own first next year, then why would they try and tank? Anyways, New Orleans will have their own first next season and a top four protected first from the Pacers, so you can. And they obviously have their really high first this year, so that's like a couple pieces. If they want to hit a full reset, it's a good time to do so. And they have players that are good enough and young enough that I mean they'll have the option. They don't have to hit the reset button. They can just continue to add lottery talent. But at some point, it's like, oh my gosh, you have all these guys, and now they're all competing for minutes, which could be seen as a good thing. But we're still not even making it to the postseason. Why are we having these lottery guys that are needing second contracts that haven't even played in the playoffs or barely played in the postseason? Gotta maybe hit a reset. Maybe they don't have to. We'll see what they end up doing, but wouldn't be there. The timing for it isn't bad. So you could get, I mean, I would imagine multiple firsts for Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Zion. And I imagine I don't know exactly what the return is for DeJounte Murray, but based on what we've seen the last two times he's been traded, probably less than that. But I would assume first, maybe firsts, but at least one. And then whatever you can get back for CJ McCollum. I don't know. Maybe that's just the rebuilding mindset that I have that makes me enjoy dynasty leagues, makes me enjoy rebuilding teams on 2K, is just trading everyone away, getting a bunch of draft picks, and just starting fresh. I'm not saying the Pelicans should do that. I'm saying it's definitely an option, and the timing of it would make sense. Um, Regardless of where Herb Jones plays next season, just assuming we'll assume it's New Orleans, but it could be elsewhere. He's going to be one of the best defenders in the league when he's on the floor. Great source of steals. That'll continue. Hopefully, can continue to improve as a shooter. Maybe get up. I mean, career highs 1.5 threes per game. Could he get up to like 1.8? Would it be too much of a stretch for him to get to 2? I'm not sure. But for fantasy purposes, he's going to make his money on the defensive end. And then hopefully be on the floor long enough to contribute a little bit here and there to kind of improve his value. All right, who else do we still have to talk about with the Pelicans that's worth putting their face on the screen? I think that's another key point right there. We'll breeze over CJ McCollum. We know what he is at this point of his career. I think it's silly to just keep him in New Orleans unless you intend to push for the postseason, because you can probably still get legit value for him in a trade. and he can help a team win playoff games at this point. Like he still is capable of that. Maybe not as well as he used to be able to, or you wouldn't want him to be your number two scoring option in a playoff series, but you can still be a valuable, as I said, reserve, like sixth man. One of the best sixth man options in the league, I think, if he were to play that role. Jordan Hawkins, I thought was pretty good in year one, kind of disappointing in year two. Never really saw the fantasy upside here. So when he started off his career hitting a bunch of threes and having some big scoring nights, I was like, oh, okay, like that's pretty cool. Like maybe I was low on him, but if his shot isn't falling, he doesn't really contribute too much else for fantasy. But I think he can be a solid rotation player for them. Brandon Boston earned himself a contract. Um, like a pretty good shot creator. I don't know. I think he benefited from all the injuries, but not necessarily a true building block for the future. Maybe a building block is a fair way to put it, but not a guy you're building, not part of the core you're building around. He's a guy you build with, I suppose, and can do some things when your stars are hurt. Like he can be that shot creator. Like it's happened for them past however many years, but like Zion, Trey Murphy are hurt, CJ McCollum's hurt. It's like, okay, like we're not just gonna struggle to score because we don't have anybody that can create their own shot. Brandon Boston can do that. Jose Alvarado is a really solid backup point guard. Good source of assists and steals when he gets the chance, but not going to be a starter. So the fantasy upside is limited to spot streams. I guess here's a guy that's worthy of the screen. Yves Missi, New Orleans first round pick from this past season, averaged 9.1 points, 8.2 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 1.3 steals per game. Was one of the better rookies in the league early on, mostly just because he was starting. And a lot of the rookies that either weren't starting or they were starting and really struggling, and he was okay. Got some double doubles, got some blocks. The upside here is just for him to maybe get like stronger and continue to improve his touch. I'm not really seeing him make jumps in any category or adding much to his game. I think he's just going to continue to be kind of like that traditional, I'll dunk the ball, get some layups, grab rebounds, block shots center. That's just going to have to rely on others to create looks for him. So for fantasy purposes, we've seen centers like that have a lot of success. But his fit next to Zion is really interesting because you don't want two just non-shooters in the lineup in the year 2025. It makes it difficult to win basketball games. So I thought that when they drafted him, the fit was pretty interesting. It's like, how does that work? It didn't limit him too much in year one because Zion only played 30 games. But I don't know. It's something that'll continue they'll have to continue to look at and figure out. I think if everyone's healthy, it probably works a little bit better if you have Yves Missi running pick and rolls with DeJounte Murray with Zion in the dunker spot, or vice versa with Yves Missi in the dunker spot, and then they can run offense out of that. And it can get him some easy layups, but I don't think you're going to have, I don't know, maybe they even run big man pick and rolls with Zion, point Zion and Yves Missi and three shooters out there. That could potentially have some interesting things happen. I'm not sure if it's what's you're really wanting to run often. I'm not sure how that works in a playoff series with very serious game plans devoted to stopping it. I'm just trying to bounce around ideas to make this thing seem exciting, and like this thing could work. We'll see. It's not my job to make it work, though. We'll see. New regime, things change. Let's see. Who else from New Orleans have we not talked about? Okay, here's a couple guys. Antonio Reeves was rookie last year at Kentucky, second round pick. During my scouting process, I was like, oh, okay, like I think pretty interesting here as a shooter, as a role player. And he had a couple fun games as a rookie. Wasn't really sure exactly how it was going to translate. Again, I think that if New Orleans is healthy, that doesn't happen. But because they weren't, he got the chance to shine. So could he be a rotation player in the NBA? Yes. Is he going to be a consistent fantasy contributor? I don't think so. And then Carlo Matkovic, I'll put his face on the screen. I think he's intriguing. Well, he has, I think, I don't want to say a better chance, but like he fits a little bit better with or as a starting center next to Zion. Has that floor spacing ability that I think you kind of need in a center next to Zion, or you'd prefer to have in a center next to Zion, but also had some good rebounding games, had a handful of double doubles, was really part of the rotation February on, with a couple other games before that sprinkled in. Shot blocking as well. I think preseason last year, he was a late round flyer, kind of like a late round flyer in redraft leagues, because it was like, hey, the center options are the first round pick rookie who can't shoot, Daniel Tice, and Carlo Matkovic. So could it be Matkovic? Just because of Zion. So didn't end up happening, but down the stretch, it was like, oh, okay, like this guy's pretty good. Is he part of the future here? We will see exactly how that plays out. But that's going to do it for the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll see what happens in the draft lottery. I think seeing how that plays out could impact some future decisions. Like if they win it, do they decide, okay, it's a great time to hit a hard reset, other people are available, or does something else happen if they slip? I don't know. We will be keeping our eyes on the Pelicans. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at NoUrban22. Similar name on Blue Sky. Follow at Old Man Squad. Subscribe, like, makes Dan happy. He texts me happy emojis when you do that. So make Dan happy. And it makes me happy as well. But that's going to do it for this episode. And I will see you next time with a very fun guest.